Thank you all for joining us today. To our sponsor for today's podcast, Safe Haven Defense, preserving property, protecting lives, providing peace of mind. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Centurion's Path podcast with AJ DeAndrea and John McDonald. And it's been a minute since we've done this.
It has been, yeah.
You've been laxing on them.
I know we have. Well, you too. I mean, life gets in the way, busy, bouncing around, doing things, and it's nice to be back, though. It's nice to be in person.
It is, and we're broadcasting tonight from a secret location in the Ozarks. So we're going to have a really cool conversation. We got a couple of great guests tonight. Well, maybe it remains to be seen if they're great.
Right. That is a good point, right?
Viewers going to have the final say-so.
This is unedited.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, good.
Yes, they are. So,
Hey, are you going to bleep?
Probably.
Okay.
With the three of you, I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of bleep.
there's going to be no bleeps. No bleeps.
So you
Irregular.
So you've been out here in Missouri since Sunday, and
And it is Wednesday.
it's Wednesday. But you came from Canada, changed suitcases out in the parking lot of DIA in Denver, and jumped on a plane to come here.
Right. Yeah, before that I was in Wisconsin, and then I was in Oregon. So, it's been busy.
Been busy. Oh,
Busy.
It's nice to be wanted.
Well, yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know if they want me back, but yeah, nice.
Wow, it's pretty cool. We're excited that we could have you come out and do some work with us, and we invited two amazing guys to come out with you. And our viewers and listeners will remember the infamous Mike Touchton from a previous episode that
Understand it was a
top quality.
well done, well received.
Absolutely.
So,
By at least one person.
I'm.
By at least one person be, right?
It is, and then.
Your wife liked it.
Hey, and if I'm a mayor, too.
There you go. And
I remember that conversation. We got pretty in depth on some philosophical things.
I know, you were probing, and, yeah, you're, and then you tried to get us, you tried to get us all emotional, and I wanted to keep it light and fun.
Yeah, right. That's
So hence we got some libation today,
right?
to keep it light and fun.
Absolutely. We invited Dave Kruse to come down from St. Louis, and we're going to be talking some rescue task force because I've got experts in my neighborhood, which is pretty exciting for my community, and we wanted you to come down here and train our first responders.
Well, you know how I feel about the word expert, right?
I know.
Yeah, no.
That's why I said you will have to. So
No experts, just some guys with some real world experience, students of the game for sure. Yeah.
absolutely. Dave, welcome to Centurion's Path podcast.
Thank you for having me.
We're excited. This is a free-flowing conversation, so
Dave's a little nervous. He's like, well, okay, I got wrangled into this dang thing. Now what the heck is going to happen?
how am I going to get out of this?
He's like, how do I get out of it?
Like,
Right?
what are these cameras?
You had to go through the powder room, get makeup.
We got a 3-camera setup here
Whatever
with,
else.
with multiple producers and camera people, and I think we're a big deal.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you this, John. We are honored at the request. We've been doing a lot of work with you here in Missouri in a lot of different capacities. A lot of it is speaking or kind of that tactical, that pre-planning stuff that we've been doing in some of the school districts and with you and with some of the law enforcement. But I think the courses that we enjoy the most, although the most labor intensive, are when you bring us down for the tactical stuff. And we were honored last year to be able to be down here and do signal officer response. And then at the request to come down and do rescue task force. And it was a lot of heavy lifting, a year in the planning,
Yep.
between, all the fire services, the sheriff's office, the PD, the ambulance service, even the hospitals involved. And so we're just grateful for the opportunity.
That's going to be a pretty exciting day tomorrow. Tomorrow's our last day. We got helicopter coming in, multiple ambulance. They'll be coming in. Rescue task force. A lot of the audience may not even understand what rescue task force is. Can the three of you explain?
Yeah, I'll take the higher kind of
Yeah.
30,000 foot view, and I'll let these guys kind of talk about, maybe law enforcement and fire and kind of what the role is. But, sometimes we lose site of, an active shooting in the event. It's so multifaceted. Sometimes in law enforcement, we get pigeoned in thinking we got one job, and that job is to stop the killing, right? When in reality, we know the mission, there's three things that we're trying to get done, and they're all kind of simultaneous, right? Stop the killing, stop the dying, start the healing. And so this, different components out there. Of course, we have contact teams that are dealing with the actual shooting that is taking place or the threat. And then depending on environment, what's going on, we may use rescue, where we're not bringing fire into the room, but officers are actually bringing anyone injured out for extrication, wrong word, right? Evacuation, to be transported to the hospital. And then depending on the situation, it may grow into rescue task force, which is the integration of fire services, EMS services with law enforcement to be able to come inside, get to those that are injured. Police may be still dealing with the contact with the actual assailant, but if we have enough distance, environment is appropriate, we can now bring in fire personnel to get to the injured and then get them out, loaded up into an ambulance and off to some type of life-saving facility. What it does, and I'll let these guys kind of get into the nitty-gritty, but what it does is it allows us to stay generalized on what we do. We're not cross-training officers to be medics. We're not cross-training medics to be officers, which that kind of TAC medic concept is critical when we start to talk about SWAT teams and actual tactical movement. But again, to wait for that particular individual, we can't wait. It was the lessons of Columbine, right? We can't wait for specialized groups to get there. What this tactic, what this concept allows is law enforcement to concentrate on what they're good at. And in a rescue task force situation, that is force protection. That is manipulating the building, the environment, force protection, bringing in firefighters and or EMS, depending on the jurisdiction's model, to do what they're good at, their generalized stuff as far as getting to the wounded, triage, and moving those individuals. And we're not trying to make a cop a firefighter and a firefighter a cop. And it just allows us to focus. And then it becomes, when we talk about generalized, anyone can do it, right? We're not waiting for that specialized unit. And so it's just one more component of it. We've got stop the killing, stop the dying, that's that process, start the healing. There's so many other aspects as far as evacuating students that aren't injured, reunification, the whole incident command structure from top to bottom. There's a lot of things that are going on in these moving parts. And as you've experienced, these things can last for days, for weeks, for years, for a lifetime, right? And so that's kind of that 30,000-foot view. I'll let them talk about their disciplines, explain it to our listeners from their perspective on what law enforcement is kind of doing, and then what fire. So
Mike, you're a commander currently.
Yeah.
And you oversee a SWAT team.
Yes. So, the evolution of law enforcement response to these things, certainly we had our push into putting patrol officers ready and able first responders into the role of stopping the killing. But, once this thing's already started off, there's any number of people that could already be affected, injured, that are savable. We don't get a lot of training. Our capabilities are pretty high compared to when I got started in '98 to render aid, stabilize people who are bleeding. But that's also manpower intensive, and when agencies need manpower for other parts of this event, to go to the threat, to contain the threat, all those other things, we have very lightly equipped and a few numbers for the rescue task force model or rescue teams. And we know we're much more efficient if we can provide force security stuff that we train all the time. We have the weaponry and the ability. Now it's just taking our cops and going, this is your job. This is how you secure these firefighters. And you get them downrange with you, working together, learning how to talk to them, gaining the experience and relationship with the firefighters that you work with every day in a different capacity. and get them to where they need to be so that they can put their healing hands on the individuals who are impacted. And we're going to save lives. No longer are the days where, you're just holding a security point and somebody is struggling in front of you. We can now get to them with the help of fire and EMS to help them, secure them, and give them the best chance at surviving. And at the end of the day, if we can do that in a timely fashion with coordination as smooth as possible, we're going to get them into their healing hands and into the system that actually is going to save their lives.
This is a pretty relatively new protocol for a lot of agencies.
Well, and that, I'll jump in on that really quick. And that, for me, that's kind of disappointing, right? Because it's not a new concept. We rolled out our first Rescue Task Force program in December of 2012. Now, it wasn't totally complete because it took us a little while longer to get tactical equipment, rifle plates and helmets for our firefighters. But it was pretty much, the ink had already dried on what this was going to look like and how it was going to roll out. So in certain parts of the country, this is just the standard way of doing it, and it has been now for over a decade.
Wow.
Other parts of the country we get to, this is the frustrating thing for me when we go out and we teach. There's certain parts of the country where, we're still stuck in doing it the old way. And we can talk about law enforcement tactics on that, right? Running with your ass on fire, jumping in a room, see who's going to win. We're going to roll the dice, right? Try to figure that one out. Versus better, and I will say better, tactics that allow us to fight more efficiently and end this thing. Or stuck in, sometimes we have some resistance from the fire service. We're not going to go in that building until you can tell us it's secure. Well, it took us 12 hours at Columbine to be able to say the building is secure. We can't wait that long. We can't do those type of things, right? And so there are parts of the country where it's resistant. There's part of the country that are very progressive and they get it. Our model is our model. We're very proud of it. We know it works. It's effective. There's nuances, places we go that people are doing this. There are some programs, but you go to some places and it's like never even heard of it before. And so those are frustrating things for me. I know it's frustrating for these two guys as well, because it's been well established for quite some time. But enough of that.
Dave, you've been hanging out with a couple of cops all week. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm around cops all the time. So I'm like,
Just checking.
we
Your mental health is important.
appreciate that. No, I'm
Hey,
good.
you didn't ask him. We've been hanging out with him.
I know.
What about our mental health?
I know the two
right?
of you.
Yeah.
There's no
Holy cow.
hope at this point.
I was hoping for more chili this week, coming from the fire service.
My wife's a cook, man.
Where do you come from?
So I'm from St. Louis County, Missouri. I work for an agency in the west side of the town called Metro West Fire Protection District. I'm also affiliated as a tactical medic for St. Louis County Police Department. And one of our responsibilities is running our active shooter training for the region. We have a large number of fire agencies and police agencies in the county. We've been doing the same kind of thing since about 2012. And we learned, we've changed, we've modified some things, we've changed some things. And progression is enhanced by having that mutual respect for different organizations and for understanding each agency's capability. And that's the thing we've learned as we go through time. And as we came in today, we come into town here locally, and the start of class, people are apprehensive. They're not saying a lot. They're your typical jab, fire, friendly fire police, joking around. That's what we do to each other. You guys joke about us, we joke about you. But by the end of the class,
Well, our jokes are real, but anyways.
okay. I'm gonna embarrass you on here. So, but as we move forward, you can see the class get to know each other better, get to trust each other better, have the ability to go into a hostile environment for someone who's not normally used to it, shots fired, those kind of things, is a lot easier if you're with somebody you trust. And if you know the people you're going in with, and you know they understand your system, that's a big deal. One of the big misconceptions when we do this, and part of having these trainings, is if I show up at home and something happens that we're going into, the local agency I work with, most of those people are in the building chasing the bad guy. So I need to have that be on the same page as all my mutual aid in responding agencies. Because I'm gonna have police officers that I've possibly never met. We get down here, it's a small community, everybody knows each other. But that some of the firefighters here are going to the building with state troopers they've never seen in their lives, or park rangers, or conservation agents, or whoever it may be, are going in. So having that system regionally that everybody understands and knows what the common goal is the recipe for success. No matter how well we feel about this, how well we think we did, how well we took the training, we applied the tactics and tools and training to get better, and in the end, the only number that anybody remembers is how many people we lost. And that's back to the stop the killing, stop the dying, and stop the healing. So if we can educate the surrounding agencies to build those relationships, start having challenging conversations about the things that are affecting our regional areas, we can have a better outcome in the long run.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this from a school standpoint, and my focus is primarily on kids, right? That's and teachers. But when I think about rescue task force and all of the violence and active shooting issues around the country, we talk about watershed moments. Columbine watershed moment for cops, and Aurora watershed moment for firefighters. I don't know when the next watershed moment is, but I do know that we have made a lot of mistakes over the last 26 years, repeatedly, time after time after time. Where history is replete with, why are we continuing to do this? And you talk about it a little bit. We need to be worldly. We need to study what's happening, because those people that are aggressively trying to take lives have been studying our tactics. Well, if you're going to be a student of this, if you're going to be, carrying that weight and responsibility for your community, you got to step up and be a learner too. And that's part of preparing and going through, the training, but continuing in the aftermath of that, right? It can't end here.
No, and not only are the assailants studying law enforcement tactics, they're studying prior school attacks. And not just school attacks, but active shooting events, and they're learning and they're changing their tactics. And that is what becomes frustrating for us, because we have so many agencies across the country that are stuck in the post-Columbine 1999 tactic. That is the answer. Those things haven't grown, they haven't adapted, right? And then, like you said, we're relearning the same, thing over and over again. And, I quote you a lot when I say the community deserves better. People deserve better than what, they got on these prior incidents. And what we can say, at least here in your community, where we're at, we're giving them the opportunity to potentially do better, right? Potentially do better. And, Dave, we all notice it when we're there, and he brought it up, right? There's some tension in the room when this thing starts. Guys are kind of looking at each other. One of the unintended outcomes, I think, is the bonding that does take place and the confidence that they have after the fact, right? Once they start to realize, listen, as far as an officer, I'm not going to have to do that. I'm not good at that. I'm worried about that. But my firefighters are there. They're doing that, and they are good at it. And for fire to say, hey, you know what? I may not be totally comfortable. No one's comfortable going into this environment, but they feel, I was going to say safe, but that's the wrong word. Maybe safer, because they're looking at their law enforcement counterpart going, all right, this guy's dialed in. And then we get them to where they start working as a team. And that takes about, I don't know, maybe a day and a quarter.
Day and a quarter.
All right, maybe a day and a half, depending on the group. But once that happens, and we see the communication kick up, we see where we know where we can rely on one another to get whatever their role is done, then we turn the page.
I mean, the latter half of day two, you see the groups more relaxed. Yes, every day after class, you ask for the takeaways. And I would say yesterday, probably 40% of the people in the class say, hey, I have a better understanding and respect for my partner, and I feel safer going in there. And happy we had the opportunity to take the training together. The big thing I push these guys is when it comes to town, find a couple of people that are passionate about making everybody else better and have those guys embrace and take it as their own. Somebody from police, somebody from fire, somebody from hospital. Create a group of internal and external stakeholders and move forward and progress the program. And that's where just having somebody come in once a year, once every 6 months is not going to get it done. You got to train us constantly or you're going to see a lapse.
Well, it's comfort, the comfort and the capability out of those individuals, and show them that, hey, this isn't necessarily rocket science. There is a way to do it right. And, you know, you don't have to be Dave Kruse or AJ DeAndrea to teach this stuff. Just know the concepts, have a line for performance, and at the end of the day, teach these guys how to work together. And they'll be able to do it whether they have minimal staffing or they have everybody there. They can actually go down and feel very comfortable with their ability to work together and do it safer and more efficiently, more professionally, and do their job that they've been training for. And they'll walk away with, yeah, this makes sense. This makes a heck of a lot of sense.
I remember I was in your very first class. The two of you taught single officer response many years ago now. And at the time, patrol was a little skeptical of being asked to go into an active shooter environment on their own. And then as rescue task force came about, it was kind of the same concept of fire. They're a little apprehensive about going into that environment. The training, at least for myself, not only does it build some skill, but it really builds confidence. Yeah. And you know, that confidence translates into action. And you know, if you follow that path and you take that seriously,
It actually goes back further than that. When you look at the creation of patrol response active shooter tactics, right after Columbine, it was the same thing. You had patrol officers in 1999 trying to get people trained up, looking at us, going, I'm not doing that. I SWAT shot, right? Single officer, same thing. Well, I can't do that unless I have my buddies, right? Firefighters and some resistance from law enforcement, knowing that they have an additional, issue here that they have to protect. We can't do that. But once we get through those, kind of moments, and everyone realize what is the ultimate goal, is to save lives. And we can do it much more effectively and efficiently, getting our hands on those that are injured, get them to a place that gives them, a facility that gives them a better chance to live. And then people start to see the value of it, and then it becomes the norm, right?
We had the same thing, like you mentioned earlier. When we started pushing the start of the program, 2012-ish, the conception was send the TAP medics and send them in. And a lot of people don't understand the time it takes to set up that TAP medic program. Our typical response for a SWAT call out is about an hour. And most of these are over in 8 to 12 minutes. Statistically, so we don't have the resources to do that. It's not realistic unless it happens in your backyard or you're training down the street. It's not going to work. Colleagues in the business that were at Parkland, Florida, they're trained SWAT training 20 minutes away, so they got a couple type medics. They're pretty quick, but by the time they got there, they're already the stop the dying was pretty much over. And the opportunity to apply those skills they had. So sure. It took some time to get people to understand that and build that confidence, but take some of the training we got and take those medical skills, and not just giving to police and fire. We're also in the process, we're giving those medical skills to law enforcement. 2012, the number of law enforcement that was taking a TECC or TCCC or some sort of combat lifesaver number was not high. When I started teaching tactical medicine back then to law enforcement, I'd say 30% of the guys were carrying a tourniquet. And then nowadays, everybody's got them. It's a standard practice. And it's not the first thing and foremost is self and buddy aid. But when we go into these schools, these guys are applying those techniques to save children and adults' lives wherever they are. We've had other issues where, based on training, we were taught to lock something down, and based on other colleagues of ours in the past, their experiences of they're locking down a hallway and they're losing people right in front. So we've progressed, and it's a win-win across the board, I think.
Well, we've been doing this podcast a while, and we've stayed away from this topic of active shooter. We spent a lot of time talking about mental health for over a year, and it's about time we had this conversation because the four of us live in this world of active shooter preparedness or training or response, and it's a hard conversation to have though because you don't want to talk tactics. Because we know some people will listen to this and be listening for that. So we stay away from tactics as we should. So we're talking about strategies and life-saving techniques, and I just wish every community out there was paying attention and saying, how do we bring this to our house for our community? Because these active shooter events are not stopping.
No.
They're just accelerating.
Well, you talk about the community. I think the community kind of expects that we're already doing this stuff, right? And they don't understand that there's generational walls about stay in your lane type thing. What they don't understand is that this is a program that needs to be built, maintained, trained, and then launched. And you're gonna perform at your level of training and preparing. If you're not getting your cops working together, I mean, we work traffic accidents all the time. We work other scenes all the time. But now this is potentially a mass casualty incident where the threat to the responders is still up and running in many cases, right? It's either an unknown or we're always concerned about additional threats. So breaking down the walls of safe scene are huge because our fire buddies don't have the weaponry to defend. They don't necessarily always have, certainly on a day-to-day basis, have body armor to protect. And they've been attacked.
You calling me a second responder?
No, first responder.
Oh, okay.
I know you're a full-on first responder.
Okay.
But they've been attacked. They've been drawn into attacks on these guys, and I get the reasoning why we want to send in the cops to contain, control, but now they got to trust us when we say, listen, we can contain and control ourselves. We can control the area that we're in, and we're going to show you how that works. And when we talk to the cops, their biggest concern is they're going to do something wrong that jeopardizes the firemen. The firemen are concerned that they're going to do something that jeopardizes themselves that the cops can't control. And there's that tension, right? I think, and then of course there's performance tension. I don't want to mess up in front of these guys. Right. I don't want to mess up in front of my buddies. And then I don't want to mess up in front of these guys in front of my buddies. But we give them a safe place to make those mistakes and work through them. And understand, if you're not making them, you're doing something wrong. You're not trying.
Yeah. It's about mutual respect, and that's where the big thing is. And I'm incredibly fortunate where I work. We work with St. Louis County a lot, but the neighboring agencies around our district, we have phenomenal relationships with because of repetition, we practice this stuff for a long, long time. And guys get comfortable. I know who I'm going to the door with. I know a name of the face. I know, and we've done enough training. I may know 2 or 3 districts over, 2 or 3 other departments over who's coming in, and we know who they are. And that's what the comfort level is. I can tell you that from experience. When we first started, even with the turnover and people retiring, both fire and police, new officers come in, but a sergeant comes up, we know what to do. We know that sergeant has empowered his people, trained them well, and they're going to take care of us. So we can go in and stop the dying. And it's just relationships. 95% of what we're teaching today and breaking down barriers, and some places in fire get along great, some people have friction. But getting together and working towards a common goal is what makes that better. And that's what it's all about. And you're going to be successful in any endeavor you try and take on together with that.
Yeah. I got a few things that I'm going to throw in here.
Please.
Imagine that I'm sitting there letting everybody talk. But
Thank you.
you're right. We did go down a kind of a rabbit hole of mental health that is an important conversation to have. I don't think it was planned that way. It's just kind of where we ended up. And Mike talks about this every time when we go up and we do introductions, and I'm going to steal his thunder a little bit, but this is his thought process. But I think it's probably each and every one of us sitting at this table can tell the exact same story. None of us, myself included, Mike's the one that said it and give him credit to it, is at the beginning of our careers, did any of us think that we would be spending this much time, truly the majority of our career, in active shooting response, active shooting preparedness? And you're right, we shied away from it a little bit. And we will never talk tactics, all right? We can talk philosophies, that's fine, right? But we're not going to talk tactics and show our cards to what capabilities are, what we cannot do, whatever that is. But it is probably a conversation that we need to push a little more, right? Because I can speak for all of us. We never thought this was going to be the path and, the direction that we're headed.
Dave wanted to be on ropes and in water.
Yeah. Right? But here I am to say, you know what? You are a second responder. And guess what? We are too. No, we are too. And that's the next evolution where we're pushing is who is the true first responders? It's those people in that building making those decisions. And that's a big push that we're doing now with programs like Evacuate, Evade, Defend.
Yes.
The target hardening that we're doing at different facilities, and the empowering of individuals to understand that I don't have to just sit here and wait for the first responders to get here. No, you know what? I can start to respond myself. I have life-saving strategies. Hopefully they've been imparted on them to say, I might be victimized. I don't have to remain a victim. And there are things that I can do to increase my chances of survival. And so we're seeing that evolution as well, right? There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of things that are going on when we start to talk about this. Some areas of the country are much more progressive.
Yeah.
Some, and we see it where we go. You can see it as you start the conversation. Certain individuals are just looking at you going, it's never going to happen here. And that's probably the biggest barrier we have. If we can break down that barrier for you to understand that, yes, it can happen here. Your day is coming. Not in a scary way, but in a way to help them prepare. We get past that first hurdle, we can move mountains.
It's really the biggest issue I face with schools around the country. Of not only it can't happen here, but I don't want it to happen here. So if I ignore it, it won't happen here. And I steal some of your quotes as well. And one of the things I tell them is that your given day is coming. For somebody in every audience that I'm in front of, I know that one person, at least one person, their given day is coming. What are you going to do? What are you willing to do to protect yourselves and protect others? And if you're putting your head in the sand, then you're not helping anybody, and you're putting potentially kids in jeopardy. I'm okay with that. 2025, every educator has to understand that you better be the emergency manager of the classroom, and sometimes you might have to be the first responder of the hallway. That should be in every job description today, unfortunately, because that's just reality. And it's not always about the active shooter. There's a ton of threats that we deal with that have nothing to do with active shooter. We just had 20 tornadoes, or 20 plus tornadoes in the state of Missouri that impacted 20 schools in one day.
Yeah.
So your threat is any number of things. But this is a pretty particular type of threat that's instigated by another person.
Yeah.
And not, Mother Nature. So.
And not just in the schools.
Yeah.
Across the board.
Absolutely.
Right. Across the board. We get a lot of kickback on lockdown drills in school, and does it traumatize the kids? Well, if we're doing it right, it doesn't traumatize them.
Right.
It is giving them a life-saving strategy that they take with them for the rest of their lives.
Right.
Right. My daughter in Point, right? Those lessons she learned back in Jefferson County Public Schools helped her survive because she had created the neural pathway in the brain. She wasn't scared. She knew that she had options, and she was empowered and she did what she needed to do to be able to survive that event. And so, that's another huge push that we're seeing, right? It's just empowering our people to understand, right? And then on the flip side of that is just paying attention to what's going on.
Right.
Getting back involved in the community. We see something a lot of times, I don't want to get involved, and I kind of turn my head, right? And then something bad happens. Just actually caring about what's going on and say, hey, no, something's there, that needs to be addressed. Now, if I can't address it as a citizen, I'm going to make the phone calls. I'm going to find whoever it needs to be able to go address that thing. And just getting people back involved.
There's been a lot of threats that have been stopped by a single phone call.
Yes.
There's somebody saying, I know something, I've heard something, I've seen something.
We just had another one in Colorado,
Well,
right? High school out east, explosive device. Law enforcement got tipped off. Things started because somebody had the courage to make the call. Yeah.
it's a powerful thing, especially with our kids, which is, primarily the world I'm in. At this point in my career, and this is somewhat of an estimate, but I'd be willing to say that I've trained over 500,000 students in active shooter preparedness at this point, from preschool through high school. I've had a long career, and it's changed a lot over the years in terms of how we train, lessons we've learned, age appropriate. But those concepts, that training didn't come about in a vacuum. It was done over hours and days and weeks and months with the two of you having conversations and having a training center where we tested it. We had a laboratory, experiment. We looked and said, what can we do to make this better, faster, and keep our kids safer? And I for the life of me, I don't understand why our schools and our community don't put more of an effort in. Like you said, it's regionally based. If you've had a mass shooting in your community, you're probably going to be pretty switched on, and you're going to want to great help compared to those that maybe haven't. But
It's a human condition,
it is.
right? So how do we protect ourselves reasonably with the time that we have? And what are some things that we can do by yourself? And it's not monumental. Like you said, just simply having your antenna up for things that shouldn't be happening and address those things. Having empowerment that is fostered through your life. You start in the schools with school drills where teachers have control, administrators have control over the movement of the people. You get into middle school, high school, there's a little more free flow. Well, what can they do? And now you get out into the real world. Does your organization that you work for foster that ability? And keep it upfront, realistic, give them options to make decisions, make them think about the problem, and they're going to do things for themselves. And, we talked about just basic hostage situation. Hostages usually save themselves. We got a SWAT team all set up. We're doing what we can, and hostage finds an option and creates a separation where now, it's helping taking care of the situation. Well, that's what we're talking about here is the people who are the targets of these attacks. If they're doing things for their benefit, it's going to benefit law enforcement and fire, because we're going to have less people that need our help. If we can stop it on the front end, all the better.
Oh, yeah.
Once it kicks off, now it's our job to respond appropriately. We better be ready to go. And we talk about our law enforcement and our fire responsibilities, and EMS, it's to save lives.
Well, you've heard me say this before, but I really believe you live in the world of prevention because tragedy is just too damn hard.
Yeah.
It just is too damn hard, and it just takes a toll on everybody. We just lost our last Columbine victim 2 weeks ago, almost 27 years after the tragedy, she just passed away. Anne Marie Alco.
26, yeah. 26 years after.
I say from her injuries, and 26 years later, we're still dealing with the trauma. So everything you're talking about, whatever we can do on the front side, whether it's teaching kids how to act in a lockdown drill or evacuate, evade, defend, which is a program we got to talk about here in a minute because we did something pretty cool today. But whether it's that or whether it's community coming together talking about how we're going to lift up programs from all those hotlines to how we're going to create community engagement to tell us about the guys building a bulldozer for a year that everybody should know about, and they don't until they decide to destroy a town. I call bullshit on that.
The interviews later from the neighbor. Yeah, I'm not surprised. That should not be the answer. To be like, yeah, and I knew that was going on. Yeah. Or I wish I would have made some phone calls, right? Because the signs were there.
Yeah. Someday we're going to have to do an episode on the bulldozer attack on Granby, Colorado, and how the two of you responded, what that was like. That's a crazy story.
Yeah.
That was one of the more surreal moments of my life. I'm not going to speak for Mike, but for me, when, we had an idea what we were going to, we start to get this briefing. The actual governor flew in, and the briefing kind of stopped, and they're like, hey, you guys go down there and see what you can do. We move up there, and I remember peeking around the corner into this alleyway, and I'm like, what the? Yeah, I mean, that was a surreal moment for sure. I don't know what was going through your head.
When I first saw it, I was like, this had to take some time. And I was surprised it wasn't therapeutic for him. Like one day he's welding, and he's like, well, I'm not mad anymore. It's like building puzzles. But no, I was a new SWAT guy. I mean, newish. It was a very talented, long-tenured team. I'm a one-year guy at that point because it was June of 04, yes?
04, yeah.
Yeah. So I'd been on the team for a year. I really don't have much of a role other than, hey, hold this position. But have some funny stories from that, but it was shocking when we put the bomb on the side. And, you're going to save it for another episode.
We're going to talk about it now. I've got a curious.
Oh, well.
I want to hear about this now.
First of all, we had done some explosive breaching by this point with my tenure on the team. And
so
I have an idea.
We started explosive breaching. Our first explosive breach entry was done in November of 99.
Okay.
All right. I don't know if we did it quite well, but that was our first one. So we've been doing explosive breaching since, late 1999. And naturally that program had progressed and we were very skilled at it. All right. Mike comes on. He's a part of the thing. He knows that's some.
So I've seen it.
So go ahead.
Just knock a hole into a wall, a masonry wall. I don't know if it was brick or I can't remember. It was, cinder block, not that tough. But I watched this same looking charge, looked like a window frame on a stick. And I don't know how much explosive is in this thing, but it's a shaped charge. And I have a lot of confidence in our guy. Rick Searle is a master at that.
Right.
He's known worldwide. So I'm thinking he's making some phone calls. He's like, "This is what I'm going to need."
Steve Mattoon, who's the guy that sent us through that he tutored under, and then the class that I went to be a breacher. We called him to say, "This is what we got. What do you think?" And he's like, "I'm not going to say the exact weight, but it was a lot.
Yeah.
You should have no problem. This should work for you guys."
So I'm standing next to this building. And my Thames medic, fantastic dude, Brian Sperry. We're getting deep into this thing because they're building this thing and they're trying to figure it out. And I'm holding a point on some security point, and Brian cares about us a lot. He is commandeered a 7-Eleven, rolls up to me, and I'm trying to stay focused. Been here a while, but stomach's rumbling. He goes, "Taquito?" He pushes it up in my mouth, and I'm like, "Are you going to hold it while I eat it?" So I just start eating this taquito. I bump out. Somebody else takes my spot. And it's funny stuff like that those are the stories later, right? And but when they set off that charge, I was shocked. I was, 150 feet away behind a building, and that building moved.
It was that moment where we're there. I think I actually was first in the movement up.
To even place it.
Well, yeah, that was another kind of funny story because our I love them to death, but our EOD guys are like, we'll always set the charges for. We're always going to set the charges for you. And now you've got this monster freaking tank there, and it's got
Guns everywhere.
It's got I think it was a 223 out the front. It was 308 out the front, I think. Don't quote me, but 223 out the side. Had a 50 cal out the back. And all of a sudden they're like, well, I think we'd be more comfortable if you guys. All right, we'll go set the dang charge.
Stick in ground, lean it. Okay.
So here we go. Big charge. We set it. We fall back on that corner of that building. And like Mike said, when that charge went, it moved the building to wow.
Displaced
Now,
off
think
its
about it.
footing.
We're in an alley. Now we're outside, right? So you're concerned, but you're not as concerned with the overpressure and the shock wave and all that. But we had a good standoff. I mean, we're not dumb, right? We were in a good position. But it moved that. But I can remember coming around the corner, and it's dusty. You've got, it was kind of in a dirt area, so you got dirt that's come up. It's dusty. You've got the charge. And I'm expecting to see exactly what Mike's saying, right? I'm expecting to see this hole, and we're going to address this guy. And as I'm getting closer, and as that dust clears, all I saw was a scribe on this steel
Oh, my God.
where the charge was set.
Wow.
And then it felt like it took forever. But then all of a sudden it just started raining. The rocks that got blown up and things that got blown off this building. Shit's coming down, hitting me in the head. We hear windows breaking and we hear stuff all around. It's like, holy crap, right? But put a scribe in this thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
it's like one of those things you're thinking, oh. Like instant disappointment.
It's like Wile E. Coyote.
100%.
How long did it take you guys? I mean, so he drives through, if I remember right, you drive into a building and it collapses in the basement?
Kind of, yeah. So he's running over buildings. He's doing his thing, and the local law enforcement that was up there, they did an amazing job. They did the best that they could do. They, in my opinion, they were dealing with something much more formidable than we were, right? Because we get the page, which was a huge honor for us, right? But we're in Jefferson County. We're going to Grand County.
Long way away.
That's a long drive. I think on a normal drive, it's maybe 2 hours. Oh, yeah. We were going to wait for a chopper, but it was hard to try to find a chopper. The chopper that we had at the time had recently been decommissioned, and it's a whole other story. We don't need to get into, but somebody got in big trouble for that one. But we thought it's just going to be faster if we just mobilize and go. So we're running code, right, all the way there.
Wow, that's a
By the
long
time
trip,
we
huh?
got there, it was pretty much already stabilized. And what had happened was he's taken out the side of the building. And in the process of doing that, he does sink in, kind of like he's kind of high centered. He kind of falls in onto the basement. But the radiator lines were also broke. And so they were, you could smell the, radiator fluid.
Didn't think about hardening those, did he?
And no, he thought about everything else. Though.
Yeah.
I mean, everything else, you think about it.
Jeez.
And so, that was our first attempt. We tried to take the tracks. That didn't work either. We tried to take the hatch with another explosive device. That didn't work. And literally, it came down to taking a settling torch. So he had an air conditioning unit that he'd mounted on top. And he had armored that, but there were these small little vents kind of at the top of it. So he could keep himself cool in there. And I don't know if he was thinking that might filter any gas or anything like that. But anyways, taking a settling torch, finding those weak joints, where his vents were off of, cutting, those joints off, peeling it off, taking a pike, pushed it into the air cooling, pulled that dang thing out, and then Mike Falsosi, he did a limited pen to try to go in and address the guy, and the guy had already shot himself. Wow. And I don't know, we don't know exactly when he shot himself. He did have a scanner, so we were hearing, You could hear voices in there. We don't know if it was him or if it was scanning of the radio, so we don't know. Or at least myself personally, I can't give you time on when he actually killed himself. But yeah, Falsosi does a limited pen, and he's dead. He so
That is crazy. I was in Maui at the time. Oh,
imagine
on
that.
the beach. And,
Of course.
I came back from the beach, turned on the TV, put my feet up, and said, "Hey, check this shit out, Jefferson County."
it's crazy, right? That's what I always say. Check it out. It's crazy.
That was me. I was looking and going, "Oh, wow, that's home."
Boy, it was crazy. You watch some of those videos before we got there, and that's a formidable machine.
Oh,
Well, militarize that town.
The road scrapers, think how big an earth scraper is, how big that machine is. He was pushing those around like they were Tonka toys.
he spent a year building that.
Yeah.
That's what we understand. And
And it was steel reinforced with concrete, reinforced with steel. I'm not going to get into all the particulars. People can look it up themselves and see it.
So they made 2 movies of that.
They did. I've never watched them, but
Did they portray? Have you seen the movie?
I've seen the documentary.
Okay.
And I was worried that there would be some martyrdom of this dude.
Yeah.
Man against government, whatever. I thought they were pretty fair. Certainly, they didn't. They portrayed him in a good manner. I've had other debriefs that brought up some other things that maybe weren't shared. But at the end of the day, that is not the way to take care of your problems with city government, right? And it wasn't his only option type thing, right? He wasn't a man pushed into the corner. We actually had just a lot of concern for the town itself. I mean, that town is not a big town. No, certainly not. Doesn't have a lot of money to rebuild that town and make something back from that. It's just a tragic situation all the way around. And ultimately, this guy's anger that festered for over a year, he had some mental health issues as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And what he was doing to whatever good for him cost him his life, cost a lot of people their safety, could have cost more lives, if not for errors that he had in building this monument to his attack on this little town. And we see that the loss of just your mental faculties to go after innocent people with violence and the effect on that town. Now, that being said, you can go up to that town and buy a T-shirt that has a bulldozer.
Where's the out, right? I mean, you get the T-shirts, and I'm like, really, man, that's what we're doing.
Right.
That's what we're doing. Teach their own, right? I'll teach their own.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that was an insane day.
There were cops on top of that thing as it's going downtown, knocking into stuff. They were trying to find ways in there.
Yeah, those local guys that were up there.
Unbelievable.
You want to talk about courageous. You want to talk about bravery. Like I said, it was, for us, it was already stabilized. It wasn't moving. It was surreal. Right.
Well, I'm talking about one of those guys stop this thing. I mean, how do you bind up those wheels or stop this thing? And, it's one of those things. And then, of course, as a SWAT team, we got a plan for this. We need a 50. We need all this stuff. Well, we're going to take something.
The tires?
No, it's tracked. It was all tracked. It was tracked. It was the largest Komatsu you could buy with diggers and blade and the whole thing.
Yeah, it was a beast, boy. And like I said, for us, it was a much more stable situation. But my hats are off for every one of those individuals that were there when that thing was moving and the efforts that they did to protect their town. Right?
Yeah.
To protect their town. You want to talk about Centurion? There you go. Right. They walked the walk that day for sure. They did it. They did a hell of a job.
Small town. Limited
Not a
resource.
ton of resources. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dave, you were living in Colorado when that happened?
No, I had not until 2005.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 05.
So the year after. Yeah.
But I watched it.
You were doing what I did.
I've been on the street.
Yeah, you were doing a job. Whoa, check this shit out. It's crazy. All right.
Oh, that's crazy. Why don't we take a break?
To be continued.
Safe Haven Defense, preserving property, protecting lives, providing peace of mind.